We will need one other window open before we begin to trace our image. We'll go to Window up at the top toolbar, and we'll go to Pathfinder. Now you can move any of these floating toolbars around by clicking on the top and holding and dragging. We're going to go ahead and just put it on the right. Place it wherever you feel comfortable in the working space. The tool we're actually going to use in the Pathfinder as we trace is the Trim tool. But first, we're going to focus on just using the regular pen tool and editing it any way we need to, editing our line any way we need to by using the add anchor point, delete anchor point, or by moving the handles around or the anchor points around. So you may want to zoom in some in order to get a nice trace of a part of your image. So we're going to just zoom into this area up here so we can get closer and make sure we're actually on the line we're tracing. So again, hold down Alt, zoom in with your rolling bar on your mouse or rolling ball on your mouse. Make sure you're in the pen tool command. Either click it on the floating toolbar or type in P on your keyboard. And now we're going to go to where it says anchor point. We're going to drop a point there. We just need a straight line. So we're going to come to about the center of our bold line to where we place our next anchor point. Because we want to draw in the middle of our lines. That way it can be as close as possible to our trace or to our image that we're tracing. So we'll click there once, and now you can see this pink line appear. So now we're just going to move down, and we're going to click again. Click and hold. And that looks pretty straight, but we may want to bend it a little bit just by clicking and holding. And that looks good there. So we're going to continue to move down and around this particular object with our pen tool until we close it by clicking on our original anchor point that we started with. So I'm going to create another point by clicking and holding. Doesn't look like I need to create a curve from that one. I'm going to go to my next point. I click and hold, but that looks good too. Go to my next point. Click. It looks a little straight, so we want to move this out with the handles some. Looks better. Go to our next point. We're going to click and hold. Looks a bit curved there. So we're going to make it as close to it as possible that we can. Okay. We can go back and edit if we need to. We're going to click again. Kind of a curved area there too, which isn't great, but that's fine. We're going to click and release. We're going to click here at the tip of this curve. I'm going to click and hold, and then we're going to fan the handle out by holding the mouse down and then release the mouse. We're going to make another point. We're going to click and hold. Use our handles to adjust our angles. Again, click and hold. Use our handles to adjust our angles. Keep clicking and holding if you need to come around with these curves to adjust the handles. Okay? And you'll begin to move quickly through this the more you work with it. As you can see, my line's not perfect, but we're going to go back and fix that. Okay? You don't have to draw points that are really close to each other. Sometimes that can add a little bit too much complexity to it, and all you'll end up doing is going back in and deleting quite a few points in order to fix it. Or it just can be so frustrating that you're going back in to delete so many points. So we're actually going to click on the guide here when it says guide and central to this line that we've been tracing. Okay? Move the handle out some there. Then we're going to go up to the point we first put down to where it says anchor, and we're going to click on that in order to close our pen tool. You'll see that there's a little circle next to the icon of the pen tool where the cursor is, and that means that we've closed our line, or we're going to close our line if we click on that anchor point. With this particular piece, some of the lines are off, not right on, so we're going to edit some of this. So we're going to go into our direct selection tool first. And we're going to see what we can do with our direct selection tool. Can we take a point by clicking it and holding it and moving it? Will that be helpful at all? In some cases it will be, in some it won't. Do we need to add points? Do we need to click on a handle and rotate that? Maybe clicking on this anchor point and rotating this handle might help here. Or clicking on the handle of the next one above might help. Right there. Same with this one, clicking on the handle of this anchor point. See if we can correct this curve any. Clicking on this anchor point and actually moving it. Click and hold to move it, to line that up better. Let's click and hold this anchor point and see if we can move it. So we can move it along our actual trace line too. Let's see if we can make that any better just by moving it. We'll click this handle, try to rotate that some. Looks a little better. We'll click again on this anchor point and move it a little bit more away from that curve. We'll click this handle, see if we can match this curve a little bit more. We'll click and hold on this anchor point and move it over. We'll actually click on the handle of that anchor point now and maybe straighten that up a little bit. Click on the other side, see if that works better. Yep. And then we're still off of our line here, so we're going to click and hold and drag this point down some. We'll click and hold this point, drag it down some. And this point looks a little wonky too, so we're going to click and hold this one. And if we drag it, it's still a little messed up, so we're going to release that with the mouse. We're going to click on the handle for it and hold it. See if we can straighten it out that way. That looks a lot better there. Now on this side here, you can see it's not matched to this line, nor is there an anchor point on this line. So one thing we're going to do is we're going to take this anchor point here, click and hold, we're going to drag it closer on the inside to that line. And we'll add an anchor point on this line to which we'll bring over to our guide to snap to. So to add an anchor point again, you have to go up to the pen tool or click the plus sign, but the pen tool with the plus sign is to add an anchor point. So we're going to go onto our path for our line, we're going to add a point, then we're going to go into our direct selection tool by clicking on it or clicking A on the keyboard. We're going to go to the anchor point we just made, click and hold, and drag that over a bit until we get it where we want it. Now there's still a weird dip there, so we need to bring it up. Maybe we need to move the other anchor point out further to help us. And then that new anchor point down, but still leave it on the guide. The other one out. We'll move the handle, help us in adjusting that. Move the new anchor point back to the guide. Correct the handle on the original one. Let's move this out and see what's happening. So we see there's a twist here on this. So we want to untwist this. So we're going to click on one of these handles and rotate it. So it got a little knotted up there. And now we're going to click on the anchor point and just bring it back down. So that looks a lot better than what we previously had. Click on one more anchor point to move it. And that looks pretty good. So in order to get out of this direct selection, we can go to a regular selection, either the tool, click on it, or click V on your keyboard. And you can click anywhere on your screen to get out of the selection. And you'll see that we have a trace line on top of our image. So if we click on that line, it'll select it. If we click elsewhere, it'll deselect it. So let's roll out of the screen by holding down Alt. And now let's turn off our image layer. So we'll go to the layers and click the eye. And now you'll see that you'll have a trace line that you laid down with your pen tool on top of your